again, I am your host, Jake Saunders, and welcome to Retro TV, the show dedicated to all things retro. If there is one thing synonymous with the 70s and the 80s, aside from disco and leg warmers respectively, it has to be games. Arcades, home entertainment systems, or just some dice and a pen and paper are starting to win the hearts and minds of kids and adults everywhere. On today's episode of Retro TV, let's wind back the clock and visit an arcade to relive some of that 80s nostalgia.
Shining display of neon lights and graphics, the arcade is a mainstay in the hearts of 80s children. It is where many popular video game franchises were born, and video game developers proved themselves worthy in the eyes of gamers. In the height of its years, the arcade saw many titles such as Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and Mortal Kombat, bringing massive crowds of young kids and teens eager to spend their time away from home playing video games. In the modern age, arcades are a relic of time, and it isn't uncommon to find them mixed with other attractions such as bowling, laser tag, and even go-karting. General Public is a great example of such a location, with loads of activities to choose from, including bowling, pool, or even shuffleboard. There won't be a dull moment once you walk through the doors. Upstairs is where the fun begins. You'll be spoilt for choice when it comes to bowling, with not one, but two bowling alleys to choose from. Once the pins are down and the game is over, making your way to the arcade is your best bet. From classics like Space Invaders to more modern games straight out of Japan, there will always be a game worthy of your time. You can try your luck and win big at the claw machine, have a few rounds of racing with your friends on the racetrack, or simply enjoy a nice game of pinball in the pinball alley. If you have a more competitive side, then you can compete for tickets and exchange them for a plethora of rewards at the rewards counter. Once you're done, you can always relax and take a drink at the bar, or head downstairs via the slide to enjoy some pizza and burgers from the kitchen, or some sweets from Vasilis. Fancy a quieter night? Well then you can make your way all the way to the back and play some pool at the red pool tables, or play a little shuffleboard while you're at it. Even though the days of old arcades may be over, General Public is proof in and of itself that you can't get rid of such a staple of 80s culture. And with a wealth of entertainment to choose from, there will always be something new to do for you and a player too.
Arcades were just a taste of entertainment for many. As technology got better and better, and subsequently smaller and smaller, it would be soon apparent that the days of having to go to an arcade to play Pac-Man would be behind us. But that wasn't always the case. When home consoles made it onto the scene in 1967, they really didn't compete with arcades. Sure, the convenience of playing Pong in your living room was there, but most developers simply prioritized building games fit for the arcade. Even games like Pac-Man and Super Mario Bros. Debuted in the arcade. But it didn't stop the home console market from expanding. With players like Nintendo and Sega and Atari coming from the mix, it wasn't long before the race to make the best console took steam. By 1997 to 98, console games officially overtook arcades, taking the crown as the way to play.
Nothing beats the classics, and the same can be said about gaming. The feeling of playing older games on newer machines just isn't the same as playing on an older system. As seemingly accessible as gaming has become, and the art of physical media seemed almost long forgotten by many, there are still people yearning to dust off an old cartridge and sit down in front of the couch ready to boot up the latest and greatest in home entertainment from yesteryear. However, to find a classic game or console in great condition has proven to be a difficult curse for many to navigate. But keeping the dream of retro gaming alive are the Game Experts.
So my name is Sal, I'm the owner of the Game Experts. About 11 years ago, I started personally collecting. And yeah, so I pretty much got hold of my first PS1 and fired it up, and ever since then it was, I just started collecting everything, and I would buy a lot of bulk stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't need, so I would on-sell it to friends, etc., and realize that there's a pretty big market for this and there's a lot of people that are after it, and I was managing to get a lot of it in. So yeah, from there we just started the journey mainly on eBay, and then started the online store, and we've been at the store for about 4 or 5 years now, and the rest is history. Nostalgia is a massive factor in it, and I think games from our past, like I can relate to a lot because it was from my past, and I think they're a little bit easier to play. I mean, there are some really, really hard games to get through that no one can ever get through, but yeah, I think they're very easier to play. You don't have to invest too much time into them like with all these new games, and then just natural fun, and the nostalgia link to it just makes it really, really cool. All of our items come cleaned and refurbed, and they come with a warranty as well. So with any consoles that we get in, we check them and see if they need cleaning, and obviously test them before we put them like on the shelf. With our games as well, we clean them either with, so for cartridges we use like isopropyl and cleaning tips and clean the actual pins. The discs, we got like a disc resurfacer that we use to clean all the discs. Everything's cleaned, tested, refurbed before it goes onto the shelf. Personally, I love the Resident Evil franchise. My favorite of the franchise would be Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. Yeah, endless memories of playing it as a kid. I could never get past a certain part, and then I remember getting, like with that PS1 that I got, ended up getting the game again and managing to clock it. So, because I grew up with a PS1, that was probably my first retro console. My older brothers had a Super Nintendo, I do remember playing on that, but with the PS1 it was the first console that we actually got, and yeah, Crash, Spyro, Metal Gear, Resident Evil, can't go wrong. It's very hard to separate from a shop owner and a collector. Like there's so much stuff that comes in, really, really rare stuff that I just want to keep, but yeah, you can't really have a store with just full of stuff that is not desirable to everyone. You need to have that rare stuff to bring in the customers, and customers love seeing all of the really, really rare stuff. Yeah, we've got so much of it, thankfully, so yeah, you gotta put it up for sale. You can't keep it all. It's a labor of love, and a lot of the really high-end sought-after titles are like really, really expensive, so you got to be well prepared. Don't get me wrong, if you want to collect retro and you're on a budget, there's so many different options. A lot of 360 PS3 stuff at the moment are really, really cheap, and I don't think have hit their potential personally. So if you do want to collect on a budget, you definitely can, but with the, cult classics from like 64, Super Nintendo, all of that stuff can get really, really expensive. So yeah, just be well prepared.
Founded in 2012 with the simple mission of making retro gaming accessible to anyone, the team at the Game Experts dedicate their time to sourcing the best retro gaming has to offer. From the N64 to the PlayStation 5, the store boasts an impressive, wide-spanning collection fit for gamers young and old. Scrolling through the shelves, you may find such classics as Super Smash Bros., Sonic the Hedgehog, Doom, and even GoldenEye. The team dedicates their time to providing a high-quality service and endeavours to provide the best retro gaming has to offer. Just one look at the shelves says it all. Despite the faded appearance of many of these beloved titles, the games and the consoles work as well as they did when they were released. And despite the lack of our beloved old red, yellow and white component cable ports in some modern TVs, there are always adapters on standby to make sure that your gaming session feels as authentic as it did back in the 90s. So grab some pizza and get comfortable, because all that is left is to press start.
Home consoles revolutionized video gaming as a whole, and became the backbone of modern consoles that we use today. And although you might be hard-pressed to find someone who still uses their Game Boy, except for die-hard fans like myself, you cannot deny the era that classic video games has certainly influenced the current generation. Home consoles and arcades aren't the only form of retro entertainment out there though. After all, there isn't always a need for fancy pixels and controllers. Sometimes all you need is a pen, paper, a set of dice, and some imagination. Like so. Come on, Nat 20, please. 18, yes, 18. I think I'm going to slay a fair few dragons with that number. Released in 1974, Dungeons & Dragons is one of the many tabletop role-playing systems that has been brought back into the spotlight, thanks to shows like Stranger Things. And today, we'll venture into the world of fantasy to discover what makes Dungeons & Dragons so appealing in the modern age.
I'm Dante and I'm 22. I started playing around 15 years old. I think I had my first game. Usually I play the Dungeon Master just because I play with a lot of my friends who've never played before. Otherwise I love my rogues and bards. I guess mainly it's having fun. Like of course the point of D&D is having fun. I also love getting into sort of like a vulnerable state of acting and live improv and really giving it our all with all our friends and having that unique sort of experience. At the start, I sort of do a speech, a little monologue of where we're at, and then we'll kind of jump into it. Usually we'll do a classic more sort of campaign where we're venturing through a forest or a dungeon and do a little bit of combat, but then we'll always return to a tavern and we'll usually have a break, eat some pizza, get a couple of drinks, and then either see where the tavern takes us or hop back to dungeon crawling. I love the easiness of pre-made campaigns, so when I DM, I would always prefer pre-made just because of my own limits of time and stuff. But when I'm playing in a campaign, I love seeing my friends homebrew stuff and what they come up with. My favourite one that I've played would have been Descent into Avernus, just because the amount of stuff that was in it was so cool and everything just felt epic and very scary and yeah, very big. But I loved the goofiness of some of like the Witchlight Carnival stuff. I've been a player a few times and every time I've loved it, I find it's hard to give it your all and stay in your sort of character sometimes. Also, the times where I could give it my all and had the energy to really portray my character or the way that I wanted my character to be, it was the best fun. Actually, I've been spending a bit of time just over the past few years to write a homebrew campaign, and at first it was inspired by pirates and I just wanted to make it quick and easy, but then I ended up really liking it. I've been working at it for the past few years, and it's turned into a more epic series of world-ending events that just happen to revolve around pirates and piratism stuff. I have tried out a local one called Fragid Aeternum, which is a Melbourne guy, and that was really cool, just seeing the different system and mechanics. However, there are a few that I've heard of, such as Die RPG, which sound awesome, and I'm really keen to sort of explore that route more. My advice would be to not be afraid to give it your all, and don't be afraid to kind of make mistakes and just go for it, because you'll get better at doing voices and improv and knowing the rules off the cuff, and that'll just come with time. And I think new players, both for DMs and characters, that's the initial step that you always have to just get over.
And now it is time for Retrofit, our weekly dose of retro fun. This week, we'll venture into the world of collectibles by visiting Lobo's Collectibles here in Melbourne.
Past the gates of Thornbury here in Melbourne, there is one collectibles store to rule them all. Having operated physically for over 15 years, Lobo's Collectibles is your one-stop shop for all things pop culture. Whether you are a collector, a fan, or just starting out, Lobos sports one of the most impressive collections, with their stock ranging from toys made in the early 1950s to action figures we'd see lining pop culture stores of today. Stocked to the brim with countless items, the store walls are covered with items that will certainly trigger one's nostalgia. Whether you're a fan of horror, fantasy, or science fiction, there is no shortage of unique and treasured items for you to find. Browsing through the shelves, you'll see some pretty familiar pop culture icons that have bedazzled many a childhood. From Marvel's Wolverine, sporting his classic yellow suit, to the Terminator in his signature leather jacket, there is no shortage of heroes or villains to choose from. You can also find classic video game consoles, board games, comics, and even Matchbox cars. On the weirder side, however, keep your eyes out for cereal and even toothbrushes. With no shortage of items to look at, you'll find yourself pacing the checkered floors for hours, deliberating on what to get. Now, despite the large collection, the store itself is fairly organised, sporting an almost museum-like quality. Every franchise has its own dedicated shelf, from Barbie to The Simpsons finding their own unique spot amongst the mega franchises of Star Wars, or Marvel and DC. From time to time, the store even hosts exhibits, displaying the action figures in scenes harkening back to their original namesakes. Not everything you see is for sale though, with some items either being too priceless or are handmade by artists here in Melbourne, such as Grave King, here by Z&G Toys. And as much as it would be awesome to roll out with one of the many posters hanging from the roof, or even the pinball machines, some items have already found their home amongst the aisles. Nevertheless, Lobos is quite a sight to behold. An ultimate money-sapping adventure for any collector. Lobos will go down in infamy as one of the most memorable toy stores in all of Melbourne. And we're sure that we'll be back to see what's in stock at Lobos.
Oh no, and just before the high score. That's all the time we have for today. But if you want to keep up to date with us, you can find us on our Instagram at retro.television.31 or sign up to our newsletter that's on screen now. Next week, we shall fall head over heels in love. But for now, I've been your host, Jake Saunders, and this has been Retro TV.
Thank you.